Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen. And today, as I always say, I have a very interesting guest, and his name is Dr. Stan Goldberg. And he is actually a fellow Northern Californian, just like I am, which is very unusual. So, welcome, Stan, and tell us a little bit about yourself and why we should be interested in you.
Well, the last question, I'm not sure why you should be interested in me.
Yeah, I'm just
People,
teasing.
I know people might be interested though in some of the things that I found out about senior
Mhm.
moments.
Yes.
Just a bit of background about myself. I taught at San Francisco State for 25 years.
Mhm.
The area that I specialized in was communication disorders. And these
Mm.
were of, children, adolescents, adults.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Uh, I was the director of the program for a while, director of the clinic. And what was especially interesting to me was trying to understand how people learned new behaviors, because that was the whole ball of wax. If you're a therapist, whether it's a speech language pathologist, that's what I was,
Mhm.
or counselor, psychotherapist, it doesn't make a difference. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get people to change. And the question is, how do you get them to change? And a prior question is, what is it that they want to change? And how do you go about facilitating that?
Mhm.
So I retired when I was 57. I had
Oh.
I had prostate cancer, and
Oh.
but that was secondary to the reason that I retired,
Uh-huh.
was I was having significant memory issues.
Ah, yes.
And I didn't realize it at that time. There's a thing called REM sleep disorder.
Mm.
A
Mhm.
lot of people have it and don't realize it, don't even know what it is. So
Mhm.
very briefly, there's a part of your brain that allows your body to be paralyzed when it sleeps.
Ah,
So
right.
you're having these incredible nightmares that you're running or jumping in some place. Well, if your body remains paralyzed as it should, you don't act them out. Well,
Ah,
the
okay.
body is a little weird. It acts them out. And
Oh
the problem
no.
with that is I would flail at night and hit my wife.
Oh,
Uh,
that's nice.
so that became the reason that this might be something I want to deal with rather than
Yeah.
keep it being suspected of being a spousal abuser.
Yeah.
So I found out that yes, this was a disorder that
Mhm.
often resulted in memory loss and other problems with memory.
Ah, okay.
So I started looking into that. And at that point, I was just basically interested in how can I take care of this issue? How can I,
Mhm.
remember a birthday party that I had that
Mhm.
I had no recollection of. This was
Mhm.
a birthday party. People came from around the country. I have no recollection of. I don't even know who was there or what I ate.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but I have some of those kind of memories myself, or
Well,
non-memories.
we do. And they all are related to sleep. So I began to
Mhm.
understand that there was a lot going on that I didn't quite understand. And then I have a good friend of mine lives in North Carolina. And this was when Halley's Comet was circling the Earth.
Ah, uh-huh.
It was visible everywhere, and he was an amateur astronomer, and he's explaining everything to me about the comet, and he says, this is. I said, well, Rich, how far is it away? And he said, over 6 million miles. And I went,
Wow.
is that from here or your house? And I thought about it. I said, what am I nuts? That's the stupidest thing I've ever said. I
Did he
realized
think you were kidding?
he did.
Oh,
And
good.
when he sees this video, he'll realize that I wasn't. But the issue then came to me was, why would I say that?
Yeah.
I think of myself as a reasonably intelligent person, yet I made it, I said something that was just inexcusable. So that started my interest in senior moments and what they are. I looked at the literature. First, I looked at the popular literature, and there was not that much written on senior moments. And what was there, 99% of it looked at it as a joke. These were funny things. This is something you should laugh at. There was even some that looked at it as strange as it sounds, as a way of reinforcing your religion and your
Huh? Okay.
I won't bother going
Yeah.
into, but so there was nothing there that really that made any sense. So I started looking at the research literature, scholarly works, and was virtually nothing on senior moments.
Wow.
I started looking more, and I was counseling caregivers, past, and these, the issues kept coming up. So what I began to realize is that there is something about senior moments that goes beyond something that's laughable.
Yeah.
A woman who, a grandmother who calls her grandchild, her favorite grandchild, by the wrong name. There's nothing joking, there's nothing laughable, either to the grandchild or to her.
No.
So I started looking at what's going on here, and what I found is you had a group of things that I called myths, and then you had instances of senior moments that you say, well, yeah, this looks like this and this and this, and they had something in common. So that's when I started looking at that. So that's not necessarily a brief background, but that's got me interested in looking at senior moments.
Yeah. No, and that makes so much sense, because I'm assuming that there's probably not just one reason, right? It may have the same thing may happen in the brain, but there could be a lot of different things that bring it on.
Yeah. Well, let's look at types of senior moments, because that was another one of the myths. You treated all senior moments as the same. And if you do that, that's like, well, about nutrition. That's like saying, well, let me see. I have a fatty piece of steak. I have kale. I have whole wheat bread and a pound of lard, and they're all food. Well,
right.
If they are, but what does that tell you? It's the same thing with senior moments.
Yeah.
They're different. I'll just very briefly list each of them. So the one that's common to everybody is you forget names and numbers. You can't quite remember it. So that's one thing. The second one is, I'm sure people who continually repeat stories or ask the same question over and over and over again to become the butt of jokes. That's another type of senior moment. A third is misplacing objects.
Yes.
Your keys, my wife goes through, losing her glasses 10 times a day. And I always nod my head and say, look in your pocket, it's always there. You also have another type of senior moment where you're substituting words. So, so you want to say one thing and something.
I do some of that. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. With some people, and this includes me, the big issue is problems with sequencing. So I'll give you an example. I'm sitting down at my computer and I'm working on something, and I decide to get a cup of coffee. So my office is on one level, the kitchen is on the upper level. By the time I get up to the kitchen, I go, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Okay. The same thing happens often when, let's say, I am writing and I cut out a section I want to move. Cut out, and you try to move it, and you go, wait a minute, what did I cut out? Where was it supposed to go? And you end up losing massive amounts. But that's another type. For a lot of seniors, there's a difficulty in completing tasks. So, some people call it you procrastinate. They use other words for it, but that can be the genesis of a senior moment. You can conflate memories. So, A lot of times, let's say my wife would be talking about an event that we went to, and I'd listen, I go, those are three events she just combined into one, you know, and that those are types of senior moments.
Uh-huh.
You also have difficulty understanding. And you know, can be caused from a lot of different reasons, but that can generate a senior moment. And the last one, and probably the most concerning one, is disorientation. So,
Mm.
and it occasionally happens to me. Let's say I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
drive off to Home Depot, and
Mm-hmm.
I made a wrong turn. I'm in another neighborhood that I'm not familiar with, and I
Mm-hmm.
think, how am I going to get there? I don't know. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember how to make which turns do I take.
Mm.
So those are 9 types of senior moments.
Mm-hmm.
And what's important is we can look at each one of those things
Mm-hmm.
and look at the genesis of it. Where, you know, how did this happen? You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
these are our identification of the situations, but the cause is something that you know that I learned, you know, when I was working with people with communication disorders.
Oh, okay.
And that is virtually every senior moment
Mm-hmm.
is the result of a problem in how we process information.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
And so if you think about it, and the question is, well, okay, well, how do we process information? There are very specific steps that are taken. The first is
Huh.
attention. You know, you have to
Uh-huh.
absorb something
Uh-huh.
before, you know, before your brain does anything with it. And then once you have that, then you've got to make sense of it. You know, you have to understand it. Once
Mm-hmm.
it's understood, it goes into memory, and there it's stored, where
Mm-hmm.
at some time in the future, you're going to need to retrieve it and
Mm-hmm.
then finally to use it. So those
Mm.
are the stages of information processing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, although it sounds very simple, the way it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, it's a very complicated process. And what's amazing is, you know, the brain can do this in milliseconds, you know, faster than computers can. And so that's like the basic outline. That's what's going on with senior moments.
Interesting. Okay. No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's a reason why they compare the brain with a computer.
Well, it's an interesting, you know, comparison
Yeah.
because, you know, I read some figures once, like the a computer may take like 100 watts to do something in a certain amount of time.
Mm.
Brain does it in milliseconds in an even shorter, you know, with a shorter, less amount of wattage. So the comparisons can go just far. Our
Yeah.
brains are so complicated
Yeah.
that when a neurologist or someone like me says this is what's
Mm-hmm.
happening in the brain, it should be understood that we're hypothesizing. We really
Yeah.
don't know what's going on. There was a great psychologist named B.F. Skinner in
Oh, yeah.
in the 1950s. What he said was, you know, we can see what's coming into our heads, we can see what goes out, but we have no idea what's in the center. And that's the approach I take when looking at senior moments.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have used conjecture on a lot of things because there isn't any data, but I
Mm-hmm.
look at the results. If I say that something should happen, you know, if we do this, so if I give you an example, and this would go under strategies,
Mm-hmm.
quite often, if you can reinforce a memory by
Mm-hmm.
making it concrete. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
just relying
Mm-hmm.
on what you think, but what you see.
Right.
And so I will work with the client. I'll say, okay, let's try this. What I'm going to do is you keep saying that you forget your keys or your wallet or your phone before you leave your
Mm-hmm.
house. Let's do this. I'm going to make a number 3 on a
Mm-hmm.
card, and I'm going to put it in front of your door. So you can't leave the house without seeing that number 3. And that's going to remind you, you need those 3 items. And so I say to myself, because this is
Mm-hmm.
called single subject research, and
Okay.
that, okay, I'm not making any generalizations about everybody, but for this person, if we try this, what will happen?
Yeah.
So try it for a month, and guess what? he never forgets those 3 items. I say to myself, I may not know exactly what's going on in the brain, but this is a strategy that works. And therefore, for this person, using a physical cue improves memory.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that for a variety of things.
So following on from that, if you took the 3 down after he'd been doing it for 3 months or something?
Well, we're talking about me.
I know.
When I took the 3 down, what happened?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That was over a year ago. I
Okay.
don't get those 3 items anymore,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
what happens in the brain?
That's what I was thinking, probably. Yeah.
Okay, think about it this way: your brain is like a vacuum cleaner. It just wants to suck up everything.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process of doing that, let's say there's something you really want to remember. So it takes
Mm-hmm.
this memory, and we think it's stored through the use of chemicals. I mean, again, all conjecture, but we know something happens and it's placed in a certain place a part of the brain. Well, with memory, unless it's an incredible traumatic event or something
Yeah.
unbelievably strong, that memory tends to fade over time.
Okay.
But you can reinforce it. If you continually reinforce it for a period of time, that fading process becomes less strong. And then eventually it is so firmly planted that you don't lose it. And again, to give you an example with myself, again, I did this for 3 months. It would not, the sign was there. People thought I was nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you have a 3 on your door? But what happened was, every time I left the house and I saw that 3, that memory that I needed to leave with 3 things in my pocket, not only in my pocket, but I also put my cell phone always in my left pocket, in my right pocket, or my keys in my wallet.
Okay.
So even when the sign was down, as I was walking out of the house, intuitively, I would check my pockets.
I was going to say, yeah.
I don't lose items like that anymore.
Okay. That's, yeah, it's interesting. What came to mind for me is something that I memorized because I used it so much, decades ago, which was my driver's license number.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me what my driver's license number is, I can just say it, without a problem. If I stop and think about it, then it can be, sometimes I'll miss a number or 2. But if it's just like out of the habit kind of thing. Yeah.
And you probably can do that with your zip code, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you a funny story about a zip code. And this was actually it was going down close to where you live. And you have to give your zip code when you use your credit card with the gas machines. So remember, I've lived in the same house now for over 40 years. Okay, I use the credit card. I've got a line of cars waiting.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Put my credit card in and it asks for the zip code. I can't.
No. Yeah.
No matter how hard I tried, it doesn't come there.
Okay.
So the question then became, okay, here's an example of a memory not working. Why? Why did this happen? Well, when we look at senior moments, we always want to think about, is this something serious? I mean, is this telling me something about how my brain is not working, or is this just a laughable event? So I started looking at what was going on prior to not being able to remember the zip code. Well, I had a difficult night. I was exhausted. I did not sleep well. I had 7 different things I was trying to complete. And so it was okay not to be concerned. I can explain why it happened. And so it's like that, that's what we would hope people do whenever they have a senior moment. There's a lot of things. One is, what are the circumstances? Where's this problem? What's the context in which it occurred? And so, you don't treat every senior moment as if it pretends, if it's forecasting dementia. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, and that I can totally come up with my own examples of that for sure.
But we all
Yeah.
can.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. And that that blank feeling,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not like, oh, is it this number or that number? No, no, it's just blank.
And
Nothing there.
what's interesting, even when that happens, you can use that as a learning experience.
Yeah.
Because what you may think is, what would it be like to develop
Mm,
dementia? I mean,
mm,
the latest figures that I saw, according to NIH, is something like 30% of the people who over the age of like 81 or 82
yeah,
develop dementia. That's a frightening number.
it
Okay.
is. It
And
is.
if that's the case, wouldn't you want to do something now to prepare you
Please.
in case you are part of that 30%? So something like, analyzing, having that feeling of just
Hmm.
blank.
Hmm.
That, I say to you, okay, this is what it might feel like if I start developing dementia. And
Hmm.
if I read Stan Goldberg's book, I know what I can do to minimize it.
I'm looking forward to it, believe
Okay.
me.
Is this the point where we tell people what the name of the book is?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Go
It,
ahead. Tell them
it,
all about it.
this, this is the book is coming out in October,
Uh-huh.
and it's called Preventing Senior Moments: How to Stay Sharp in Your 90s and Beyond. And it can be pre-ordered from Amazon this very minute, but you may want to wait until we're done with the podcast and then run to your computer and order it. Is that enough of a plug?
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. That's very good. You gave all the pertinent information where they can find it, the name of it, and that your name is Stan Goldberg. And
I
that
think
that
so.
that's
Right.
the last little piece, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it really is scary. I can still remember, which is actually kind of funny when you say it that way. Um, um, I don't know, I guess it was in the middle of the lockdown and I was driving and I hadn't been driving around very much. And I was driving in a neighborhood that I used to live in Oakland, I think it was, might have been Berkeley. And got to a certain point and I was like, oh my God, I don't know which way I'm supposed to go. It's like it didn't even look familiar.
No. Yeah.
It was like I was in a totally different place.
I've been there.
Scared the shit out of me.
Yes. Yeah. It absolutely it happened. It happened to me. This was years ago when my son went to school at the University of Arizona,
Ah,
and
yeah.
and we
Tempe?
no
No, different
Tucson,
one. Oh,
Tucson.
Tucson. Okay.
So we went into a mall. It's just one of these huge malls, and I don't like malls. They're just too big and too noisy. But he wanted to buy something, and I needed to buy something. And I said, okay, I'll meet you back here, when
Uh-oh.
in 10, 15 minutes. And I didn't realize that there was like 10 entrances to
Oh
this
no.
building, and they all looked the same. So,
Uh-huh.
I panicked
I
because
bet.
I couldn't find him.
Yes.
And I knew he was worried about me
Yeah.
because, I mean, where
Right.
did my father
Yes.
go?
Yes. Yeah.
So, so that happens. One of the things that occurs also is, although sometimes uh, we make fun of senior moments,
Mm,
there are times when we need to take them very seriously. I'll give
mm,
you an example. Um, my mother would come out and visit us here in San Francisco, usually once or twice a year. And I came home one time and I didn't see her. And that she wasn't going to walk anywhere. She wasn't, and I just couldn't find her. And we have a deck in the back of the house that goes down into a forested area.
oops.
And so I came and I looked and I didn't see her anywhere. I went out on the deck and I saw the gate open. And so I panicked. And, I looked, and here came my mother from behind a tree, and she was holding branches and leaves and sort of walking up. I said, "Mom, what are you doing?" She said, "The forest looks so messy from inside, I decided to straighten it out." I said, "Mom, it's a forest." Okay. Great story for parties. Everybody loved it. Everyone in the family said, "Yeah,
What
that's
scared the shit out of you, right? Yeah.
it did." But what was worse is when she died.
Uh-huh.
At that point, we were only seeing her once, twice a year. When she died, all of her friends came up to me and started telling me stories about my mother's getting disoriented.
Oh no.
Although she was pretending
Yes.
that it was just a senior moment, and I probably found it convincing or convenient to believe the same thing. It was an early indication of a beginning of dementia for her. So, when we look at senior moments, we need to think about them not as anything that's absolutely certain or has no variation. You need to look at each one individually.
And I think also for so many of us, as we've gotten older, and then our parents get older, right? Like you're talking about. My mother started having issues. She wasn't driving quite so much, and she wasn't, she wasn't feeling well, so she wasn't getting out a lot. She was living in LA at the time. And she started hearing other people that were talking about her. And they wanted, oh yeah, and they wanted to kill her. And, and it's like half the time she was fine. And actually brought her up here, moved her up here to the Bay Area. And it was interesting because the psychiatrist, I think it was, that we took her to, or she might have already been seeing her, I don't remember, said that it was from, trying to think, what it wasn't alienation, but it was like, the fact she wasn't talking to anybody.
Disassociation?
No, just like not like
relation.
Loneliness.
Yeah.
Kind of, right? Yeah. Some people hear friends or whatever, and she heard people who wanted to kill her. But that was their whole thing, was that was what was creating it. Which I thought was kind of interesting. It didn't help to bring her up here. She just got more scared.
It also is probably an explanation when someone really doesn't know what's going on. I've heard this a lot. I've heard psychological explanations for things that are occurring when we know physiologically something is going on, and they don't know why. And I've experienced auditory hallucinations because of my REM sleep disorder. Now, I'm not angry at anybody. I don't feel someone is coming in to harm me. But if I start hearing noises, I go, okay, whatever is going on physiologically is producing these sounds, and that's what it is. So, I'm sure that a psychological condition or event may be a precipitating element for hallucinations, but I think it's more beneficial to start looking at what's going on neurologically. And I don't think we're very far into that of understanding.
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah, and whatever it was, she didn't, whatever they tried didn't work. So anyways, so she had enough, and she took it in her own hands. Anyways, So yeah, there's so much we don't know,
Mhm.
as you said. Um, I think that we know a lot more than we used to,
Yes.
but when it's this big and you now know this much instead of that much, you know,
Well,
it's
it's
interesting.
it doesn't produce a sense of helplessness in me,
No, no, no,
but
no.
it says, let me see if I can find alternative ways of
Mm,
what's going on.
mhm,
And that's when I revert back to B.F. Skinner's black box.
right.
You know, I mean, if I'm working with someone who is embarrassed because
Mm,
of senior moments,
mhm.
I don't need to know physiologically what's going on as long as I can test out different strategies that
Ah,
work to reduce
uh-huh.
the influence of that. And in the book, there are 8 strategies that
Okay.
people can use, and it's all laid out, so it's very simple.
Hmm.
I'm sure we don't have time to go over all of them, but let me
Yeah.
just a couple real
Uh-huh.
quick.
Okay.
One of the best strategies that I found that works tremendously is very simple. It's slowing down.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it's slowing down what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're reading. Uh,
Mm,
and for me, euphemistically, the best way of thinking of what's happening is you have a machine that has 2 clogs. Okay. If everything is
mhm.
working perfectly, they just mesh like this and they hums along. But if one is slightly out of skew, it just keeps clanging like that. So if you have a senior moment,
Mhm.
if it's, let's say, related to doing something,
Mhm.
try doing it slower and see if you have a senior
Mm,
moment when the
mm.
behavior is slowed. If you have senior moments because you're saying something silly at a book club meeting,
Uh-huh.
that you thought you read slower. And
Uh-huh.
there's lots of different tactics that can use to make things more comprehensive. So
Mm.
that's one. There is another strategy that's called challenging your brain.
Okay.
Some of the recent research in neurology has been absolutely fascinating on the growing of new neurons and new
Mm.
neural connections. And they
Oh,
found this even in people with Alzheimer's. You
wow.
know, there was a period of time when we thought, brain cells die, that's it, they're gone, nothing.
Mhm,
Well, that's
mhm.
not the
Right.
case. So the question then becomes, if this is true, what makes it that way? What can we
Mhm,
do to increase the gray matter?
mhm.
Well, 2 things, very simple. One is things that are creative, and the other things that are cognitive, that are really stressing the brain. Do
Okay.
each of those 2 things and just notice whether doing that in general is going to help senior moments. Get off the couch, turn off the TV, stop watching reruns of Law and Order, and go outside and plant rose bushes. You know,
Mm. Yeah.
that anything like that.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as a 6-year-old's cardboard puzzle. What are you
Oh,
doing with
okay.
the puzzle? You
Yeah.
have you're working with perception. You're
Mhm,
figuring out placement of objects. You're turning things. You're looking at so
mhm.
anything like that. Try doing
Uh-huh.
that. I think you're going to find that it should have an effect on those things that you are most concerned about that you call senior moments.
Mhm, mhm. Interesting. Interesting. So it's not like, well, this works best if you have this kind of a senior moment. It's like these things work for any kind of senior moments.
Some of them do. You know,
Okay.
the,
Yeah.
the rate does, and that even works for disorientation, which is the most difficult.
Mm.
When you're driving in a strange neighborhood,
Yeah.
slow down, slow down.
Yeah.
So you have a better perception of what's around you. It
Uh-huh.
gives brain also more time to
Uh-huh.
create a memory that you can rely on later. Okay,
Yeah.
so things like that work.
Oh yeah. And if there's a lot of traffic or something, pull over for a couple of minutes just to
Exactly.
orient yourself a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 Because the way people drive these days, if you go too slow, they start honking and go around you and all this other stuff, which just makes you get more.
That's true.
But that's from living in big cities, right?
We're in Florida.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's why I stay away from Florida. Um, but all of that being said, yeah, so that's, well, I'm sorry, just so many things to think about.
You
And
haven't seen your moment.
I'm always having senior moments. Just ask my husband; he'll be happy to tell you. Yes, I keep telling him to stop getting frustrated with me.
Mm-hmm. Good luck.
Yeah,
My,
right. Thank
my,
you.
my wife says that to me all the time and doesn't work either.
I know. Well, I'll just, I try and think that maybe he's just worried about me.
Yes.
Give him the benefit of the doubt.
Good.
So, anyways, well, with all of that being said, why don't you tell us again a little bit about the book?
Okay.
Are there other ways that people can either get in touch with you or,
Absolutely.
you have some other interesting books as well, I believe.
Yeah, I actually there's quite a few.
Just
And
happen to have
I
them.
just happen to have them here. It's better than I know on a lot of the TV shows when they interview
Uh-huh.
people, they have like a whole line in the
Yes. Yes.
looks ridiculous. So this is one's called Lessons for the Living. And
Uh-huh.
again, these are available on Amazon as well. Lessons
Uh-huh.
for the Living. And this is my memoir of being a hospice volunteer for 8 years at,
Oh,
at the
wow.
at the Zen Buddhist Center here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yep.
one.
Know it well. Mm-hmm.
There's another one called Loving, Supporting, and Caring for the Cancer Patient.
There we go. Okay.
I'm not a very good salesman.
No, no.
And this is
Okay.
something that I don't think I mentioned. I did mention earlier. I have
Mm-hmm.
cancer. I have
Mm-hmm.
prostate cancer. And I've had it now for over 25 years. And I
Wow.
also counsel people with cancer. So
Uh-huh.
this contains things that are important, I think, for people who are caregivers of cancer victims to know.
Mm-hmm.
This was another one called Leaning into Sharp Points. And
Ah.
this is a general book on caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes the position that caregivers are in almost as much need of being supported as people they're caring for. So
Oh, yes.
this helps there. Uh,
Yes. Yes. I can attest to that one.
this one's called Ready to Learn. Uh,
Mm.
this is this is a book. This is one of the first books I wrote a long time ago, and it had to do with trying to figure out what parents can do to enable their children who learn differently succeed. So this was again, it's an old one, and there's others that had to have chapters I've
Yeah.
written, but these are the
Uh-huh.
main. I also
Okay.
have a website, and the website is Stan Goldberg Writer,
Mm-hmm.
WRITER.com. And on there are over 200 articles that I wrote that deal with various problems that I've been writing about. So
Mm.
there's articles there on caregiving, end of life issues, on cancer, on I'm just starting a section there on senior moments, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the sections will go into that. There's a section there on Alzheimer's and dementia as well.
Mm.
So
Okay.
you can download any of the articles there. You have the opportunity to comment on the articles, and
Wow.
I try to get back to people usually within 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
I I guess a lot of the other stuff I've written appears on other websites as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes, just so people know that it's there if they want it. I think most people don't, seems to be my experience. Most people don't look at the show notes, especially when they listen to the audio. Like,
Hmm?
it's like they never read what goes along with it. They just listen, and when it's over, they go on to the next one. So it's good that you put all of this
Good.
in our discussion.
I appreciate you allowing me to do that.
Oh, hey, that's part of the service. What can I say? So, anyways, okay. Well, with all of that said, um, I always feel really stupid having to say this, but I kind of do have to. Anyways, which is, and it's not totally true, that neither of us are doctors, at least I'm not. And this is not to be seen as medical advice. So if
Absolutely.
you are having problems, please go see someone
Yeah. And
and get some help. Yes.
just a quick aside, when my mother would be explaining to her friends what I do, and she would say, well, he's a doctor, but not the type that helps people.
Oh no.
So yes, so don't take medical advice from me because I don't help people.
Oh, that's funny. I like that. That's a great way to end the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been just the information is absolutely wonderful, and I definitely need it. So, and I will see everybody else next week.
Okay.